Live streaming is on.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Robert Cannon. I'm the tournament director for this weekend's National Online Junior Forensic Championship, national online tournament. It's the first time we've done this, but nationally, but it's not the first time we've run online tournaments. We've had a bunch of these, and some of you have been to some of the training sessions that we've hosted. I want to give you a little bit of an overview as to what to expect for this weekend. With us also is the middle school tournament director, Mike Kyle from Nova 42. Say hi, Mike.
Hi, Mike.
There he is. So we'll be training everybody in what to expect for this weekend. And I'd like to break the training session up into three different parts. The first part that I want to go over today is I want to go over how the ballots are going to work and how that's like the tournament structure. Then we'll talk about how 8x8 works. That's the virtual room that you're seeing right now. And then finally, we'll talk about how the actual individual events work. And when I say individual events, I don't mean just the speech events, but also debate, like individually, how do each one of those events work? So we'll talk about it in that order. And I'm asking that if you could please hold your questions until we get to break points between each one of those sections. So after I explain how the e-ballots will work, if you have any questions at that point, I'm happy to answer questions. And then we'll talk about the 8x8 rooms. And if you have any questions about that, I'll take them at the end of my explanation. And then after we discuss the events, I'll take questions there as well. So we'll have different stages to kind of pose questions. So if you have any, go ahead and jot them down, and I'm happy to answer those when we hit some of those break points. So the first thing that I want to do is I want to give you an overview as to what to expect for this weekend. Let me present a little slideshow here. Let me go back. Jumped ahead. So we're using forensics-tournament.net. And hopefully your coaches have explained that to you already. We're not using Tab Room or any other software like SpeechWire or Joy of Tournaments. So it is forensics-tournament.net. You'll be getting messages from this website. Please ignore at the bottom. This is a presentation that the web designer, Danny Cantrell, put together on April 15th. So our tournament is obviously a little bit later than that. And this is kind of an overview to show you how things are going to work. So the first thing is that your coach should have updated a roster. And the coaches have two different rosters. They have a student roster and they have a judge roster. So you can see over here when they log in at the top of the page, there's a roster. Most coaches have already updated their judges and their student rosters. We've been sending out emails to coaches to make sure that they're doing that already. When they update the roster, they can add, let's say here you got a new student, and you can see some of the students already exist, like Garrett Morgan, and you can edit those students and change their posting preferences. So basically what the posting preference is the way that student is going to receive their room assignments. So if they would prefer to have that on text or email, then that's sent to them whichever way that they prefer. The same here, you can change all of their information. When you click on the individual student, you can add an email, you can add a phone number. And it's helpful to have both. It's helpful to have email and phone number. Even if your posting preference is, say, email, it's helpful to have the phone number because we can also send out notifications about tournament announcements to your text at the same contact. So in other words, we'll send your postings to the email, but we'll also notify you for any tournament announcements through text.
Robert, I'm not seeing your screen right now.
Oh, you're not? I'm sorry.
Is anyone else seeing your screen?
Well, maybe I'm not sharing it right. Let's try this again.
I think you went away and then didn't go back to it. There we go.
Is that there?
Yep. Now I got it.
All right. So sorry about that. So this is. Can you see that? Is that working?
Yes.
Okay, great. So that's the email that the coach will put in, and there's the phone number, and of course they could change the posting preference. There are only a handful of people at the tournament that still are set to paper, which was good. I checked last night, and there were a handful, probably about 5 or 6. So if you're a competitor or a judge who isn't receiving anything, please check with your coach, because it's possible your coach didn't change your posting preference over from paper into email or text. We did try to contact all of the coaches and let them know, hey, you still have a few people who haven't been changed over. So we've notified them, but the coach is going to have to do that before the tournament. And then, of course, you hit update, and that changes everything. You can see as well that on the roster for the coaches, it's a reflection of everything. It'll show the email, it'll show the phone number. And then the next important step is to verify it. So coaches can click this button called Verify Contact Info. And this is now a message that's sent via email or via text to the competitor or the judge, letting them know, hey, you need to click this Verify button to make sure that we're in good communication between the tournament and your email. So if you have judges who, if judges are coming in that have all of their emails going to spam, or if they're if the email was typed incorrectly, this weekend I noticed that someone had a web address that was at Gmall, and they never put the I in there, and that's obviously going to be a problem because the system doesn't go through and spell check for everything. It sends an email to so-and-so at Gmall, and if the email is not written correctly, that could be a problem. So you definitely want to verify. If you are a judge and you have not verified already, please speak to your coach and ask them to send you a verification email or text to make sure. So once you click that button, then it's verified. Here's a text example of what it looks like. So you click that link, and when you click it, it will verify with the system. It says, yes, this person is receiving the texts and the emails. And then the coach will get a little green check next to your name to let you know, to let them know that you have clicked your cell phone and clicked your email that was sent to you. So you're completely verified. Next are the postings. So once the tournament begins, we're going to send students a link to their room. And we're going to be using the 8x8 video software. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. And here's an example of what that looks like. There's a couple of weirdos. And then we'll talk about the benefit of being in these rooms and how they work in just a few minutes. I do have some sample rounds. If anyone would like to see any sample rounds, you can email me, and I'll be happy to share with you some examples that some college students put together of what these rounds will look like. The ballots themselves will actually be sent to the judges. You're going to receive an email like this. It says, click here to accept the ballot. You can see that on the right. So you'll get an email that says, if you've selected email as your preference, you'll get an email. If you select text as your preference, then you'll get a text. We did update the system so that for this tournament, if you have entered a cell phone number, even if your preference is email, you will get a text notifying you that a ballot has been sent. So your email ballot will be sent to you, but you'll get a text as long as your coach has put both pieces of information in. So again, please check with your coach, make sure that both your cell phone and your email have been submitted and verified, and then that way you'll get a notification on your phone and you don't have to worry about it taking a long time for the email to come through or something like that. So we'll go through this whole process. So here, the whole process is that judges accept the ballot. So the ballot will be sent to them by email. When you click that button, that lets us know that you've accepted the ballot. Then it will take you to the e-ballot, which we're going to go over in just a minute and what it looks like. And then once you've ranked everybody, you click the submit. So I'm going to walk you through that whole process right now. So this is what an e-ballot looks like. You'll get an email, and then you'll click that button, and it will take you to this page. And you can see this is Sandra Day O'Connor's ballot. She's doing informative. And I'm going to walk you through what the whole ballot looks like. Right here is the link to the live video room. So the live video room, that button takes you to the 8x8 competition room where all the students are waiting for you. So when you click that link, it will open up in a new tab. A lot of judges prefer to be on the laptop so that they can use one tab to take notes in and another tab to actually watch the competitors. It may be helpful to actually to type out notes on your laptop while watching on an iPad. You can do it that way. Some people prefer to watch the video and handwrite their notes on a piece of paper and then transcribe those notes back over to the e-ballot later. Any of those are acceptable, but this link right here, the big blue button, will take you to the room where the competitors are waiting. Next, you'll notice a help button. When you click that help button, that sends the tournament a notification and says, hey, I need some help in this room, and we'll send someone to your live video room to come help you. So if you're confused about what's going on in the ballot, you don't understand something, click that help button, and we'll send somebody to that live video room to meet you. Here is the feedback form. So when you click this link, there will be a menu that drops down. So under this competitor, there will be a little space for you to write in notes, and you can say, great job with your volume. Maybe you need a little bit more explanation on your third body point, whatever it is. You'll also see here a space for topics. So we ask that you please write the topic in for each competitor. Between the two, and there's not an arrow here right now, there is a no-show. If you have a student that is not there, that's not double entered, and the students will be marked as DE. So they'll have a DE next to their name over here. So if, let's say, Cassius Clay was double entered, you would see Cassius Clay and then in parentheses DE. If they're not double entered, then you can click no show, and that means that we'll get a notification that Cassius Clay is not, he's not there, and we need to notify his coach and make sure that that he is getting into his round. That might mean that he just got scared and didn't want to do the tournament, but it might also mean that that he is lost and he's having trouble getting there. So by clicking that no show, you send us a notification that we need to track that student down. Where the topic goes, that's really for your benefit so that you can keep all of this speeches straight after the round. It also helps us in the tab room make sure that there weren't errors. So if you gave Sally Ride, if you gave her first place and you said her speech was about astronauts, and Indiana Jones gave his speech and it was about archaeology, but you put for Sally Ride archaeology, and for Indiana Jones you wrote his topic as being an astronaut, then we would know that you might have gotten those speeches confused, and we should track you down and discuss the ranks and make sure that there wasn't a mistake that was made between the competitors. This is what the feedback form looks like. So you can see right here, you've got a clock, a stopwatch that's built into the ballot. So you got a start, stop, and reset button right here next to it. If you prefer to use your own hand stopwatch, you can do that and then type in the time as well. That time will be recorded on the ballot so the student knows how long the speech lasted. Underneath that is a space for comments. So if you have any notes for the student, and we do ask that you write notes for each student. We also recommend what Mike calls the compliment sandwich, and I love this. The compliment sandwich would be a compliment and then maybe some constructive criticism and then another compliment. Please do not leave this field blank. That's always a problem for the students when they get 5th place, great job, and that's really a rough explanation for the students to try to figure out, well, what did I do? What did I do wrong? What do I need to do better? So please give more detailed instructions as to what they could do to improve. And the same even for first place. Even if they took first place in your round, you would want to explain why they took first place, what they could do better. So the students really do look deeply at these notes, and you want to make sure that you're giving constructive, helpful feedback for each one of them. There will also be prompts on these ballots. So right here next to the feedback form, you can see that there's an option for prompts. Not all events will have prompts. Impromptu and Spar, those are events that will have prompts. And what will happen is when you click that prompt tab up here at the top, you can see where it says John Adams and it says feedback form, and next to it, it says prompts. When you click it, these prompts will pull down, and they won't necessarily be these prompts, but prompts will pull down. And if this was impromptu, you would copy these prompts and then paste them into the chat window where all the students are. Obviously, you want to do one speaker at a time. And if for an impromptu, they would use these 3 different quotations that are provided, and the time would begin once you paste those prompts into the chat window. Each student will have a different prompt, so you don't need to worry about exposing the prompts to the other students. If you're doing Spar, then the prompts will be the same for the first and second speaker because they're debating each other. And then speakers 3 and 4 will be the same prompts, and then speakers 5 and 6 will be the same prompts. So if you go to the speaker number 2 prompts and they're the same as number 1, that's why. It's because speaker number 1 and number 2 should be debating each other, and speaker number 3 and 4 should debate each other, and speaker number 5 and 6 should debate each other. If a student isn't in the room, either because of a no-show, they're running a little bit late, or something like that, you can move the order around a little bit. You can have speaker number 3 move up and speak against speaker number 1, but you just need to remember to keep the prompts straight. Like, so if speaker number 3 is speaking in the second speaker's position for Spar, you'll need to make sure that you that you, when speaker number 2 arrives, that you give them the speaker number 3 prompt. So right there's the prompts. And you can also click copy prompts to clipboard. It will copy, and then you can paste it into the 8x8 window. We already discussed the no-show. So if you click that no-show button, then you can click this, and it will let us know that queen is a no-show. And then over here, you'll see the rank and rate. Now, our tournament doesn't use rate. So the rate are these speaker points, the 25, 24, 22. We only use rankings. So that's first, second, third, fourth, fifth, 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 fifth. There can only be 1 first place, 1 second place, 1 third place, and 1 fourth place. But after fifth place, everyone ties unless it's a final round. In final rounds, we go all the way to however many people are in your room. So if you have 6 or even 7 people in the room, you'll go all the way to 6th or 7th place.
That includes quarterfinals and semifinals.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So anything that's not a preliminary round would rank all the way out to everyone in there. But if it's a preliminary round, like one of the first few rounds, then you would tie after 5th place. Thanks, Mike. Once you've done all that, once you've ranked everyone, you'll hit confirm ballot. Now, you're not done yet. So once you click that confirm ballot, there's a problem with some judges who think, well, I'm finished. Well, you need to actually confirm the ballot. So once you click the ballot, it'll then take you to a screen that says, all right, here's a summary of everything that you wrote. Here's the different competitors. Here's their ranks. Is this what you want? And then you'll need to click the save button. So you're not done until you click the save button right down here. Once you do that, you'll see the palm trees. So we tell everybody, keep going until you see the palm trees. If you don't see the palm trees, you're not done. Okay, so I think that's about it for the what am I trying to say? For the ballots. Were there any questions about how the ballots work? Mike, go ahead.
So when you press the ballot or go view live video room, does the ballot stay on a different window, or do you have to go back to that window?
So the ballot will be active until you hit the save button, the confirm and save button. You can go back to that ballot. So if you close the tab or something like that, you can always go back to it. So once you click that live video link and you go to an 8x8 room like this, you can either close that original tab or you can leave it open. It's entirely up to you. But the link is available and open to you until you hit the save button and see the palm trees. Once you do that, you can't have access to the ballot anymore. And the only way to change your score would be to contact us in the tab room, and then we could do it for you. Yeah, Paul Brewer, I see your hand is up. Paul, your audio is muted. You'll need to unmute your audio.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. What if we get a ballot that we're not signed up for? So the coaches signed us up for a particular ballot, and we get a ballot that we have no formal training other than what we did today. And for fairness for the kids, should we contact the tab room and let them know?
Yeah, I mean, there's 2 sides to things. I've contacted all the coaches and asked for them to please meet with me, and I've gone through each judge and made sure that the judge is signed up for events that the coach feels that they're comfortable doing. But if you come to me and say, well, I'm not comfortable doing this event, it may be something that the tournament says, well, I mean, you've done similar events to this, and so we want you to do this one because it's very, very similar, meaning if you already judged a DI round and now you're handed an HI ballot, we would say, we think you can handle it. You've already done one, and they're very, very similar. If there are some extenuating circumstances and we have the judges to replace you, we might be able to switch you out. So I don't think it's a bad idea to come in and say, hey, I feel a little uncomfortable with this ballot, but we do want to make sure that you are trained. You should be speaking with your coach and make sure that you are aware of what events they've signed you up for and how to judge some of those events. Yeah, Mike?
Gotcha.
Just to clarify, Paul, too, you don't go to tab room to talk about that. You'll go to the help room. Okay?
Gotcha.
The help room will be able to delineate and help you on those things. I would say, though, in all fairness, especially middle school and elementary, that the only event you might have difficulty with would be policy debate. and maybe Lincoln Douglas, and we try our best to make sure that we put the right judges in for those events. So typically you won't be getting those kind of rounds. However, we are short on some of the debate judges. So that means some judges may be put into rounds they're not comfortable with. If you go to the help room and ask them for a quick little, understanding of what the event is, you'll be in a better shape than a lot of judges we've had over the year. Now, we appreciate it if you feel uncomfortable and you don't want to do it. Just make sure the the help room knows that. And then if they can reassign it, they will.
Okay. Yeah, the last tournament I did Congress, and I was like just really thrown into the fire. So the good news is I wasn't the head judge on it, but there was a lot of confusion. The other ballots, like the debate and speech ballots I did, they were easy, but the Congress one, I think I kind of made some errors on it, and so that's why I'm saying I don't want to make that same mistake. So I could go to the help center and say, hey, I'm not comfortable with Congress because I made a mistake before. Maybe you guys should possibly look for another judge. Would be the
Yeah, I think if you ever have any questions about any ballots, please come see the help desk. If you have any questions about how to fill out the ballot, come see the help desk. I mean, that's why we have the help desk, is to make sure. And the help desk will be on every email that you receive. The link to the help desk will be at the bottom. So the help room, I keep calling it help desk, the help room. And just so everyone here has it, the help room will be 8x8.vc/NOJFC help. So National Online Junior Forensics Championship help, NOJFC help.
Okay, cool.
All right, Dolly, it looks like you have a question.
Yeah, my question is, on Tab Room, we typically, as a judge, get 24 hours to put in the comments. Like, you can submit the rankings, but have a little more time to type up your wordy comments. Is that possible with this, or do you have to complete the comments along with the ranking?
At this time, we are asking everyone to fill out the comments along with the ranking, and there's not a way to really go back and change it without contacting us directly at this time. If you need additional time to finish out some comments, most likely that's probably going to be for, well, I should put it this way. We have debate and speech staggered for most of the tournament. So if you are a debate judge and you have comments that you want to write, you'll usually have a little bit of buffer time because we'll start in with some speech stuff, some speech rounds, and you can kind of overlap with some of that speech stuff while you're still kind of filling out your ballot. And we will give you that time to do. And the same for speech. Speech, if you need a little bit more time to finish a speech ballot, there will usually be a debate round right afterwards, so you'll have a little bit of that buffer time. The only real problem becomes on Sunday, where it goes speech, speech, speech in the morning. And so that might be a little bit of a faster turnaround. But generally speaking, we've structured the rounds to give you enough time to fill out those ballots, and we've not had too many problems with it.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Any other questions? Okay, I want to call your attention to this 8x8 room. I think most of you have it already figured out because you're here, but some people may be watching on YouTube, and I just want to make sure that you're aware of what it looks like. In this 8x8 room, at the bottom in the middle, there will be 3 buttons, and I like to start there when people are coming into the 8x8 room and just kind of orient you with these 3 buttons at the bottom. The one in the middle is obviously leave the room. So if you hit the big red button, you're going to leave. And that's probably the one that's the last button you want to hit, literally. And then next to it, you'll see a microphone and a camera, and those are your mute buttons. So if I mute my camera, you'll see I go away, and then I can hit it again and show up. Same thing with my audio. When I click my mute for audio, and obviously that mutes the audio. On the my left, your right-hand side, am I pointing the correct way? I think it's let's see, this way, over here, right? This way. There will be 3 buttons. One looks like a TV square with an arrow pointing to it. That's a link if you want to share your screen like I did earlier, if you want to show a slideshow. The one next to it is a hand, so if you want to raise your hand, some people have already clicked that raise or lower hand. And the one next to that is a really, really important button for all judges, especially those who are judging impromptu or spar. That is the chat window. So when you click that, when you click that button, you could type in some stuff into that field, and that's where you would paste those prompts that you get from your e-ballot. So if you've got quotations from impromptu, or if you've got SPAR topics, that's where you'll paste those, is into the chat room for the students. If you have trouble, sometimes you can ask the students. The students might even be able to help you out and say, oh yeah, they usually put it in this chat window, and they'll kind of point out where those things are. Over on the other side of things, I think it would be over, let's see, on this side, there is a toggle tile view. So if you want to play with that, those are 4 little squares, and that can put you into tile view where you can see everyone in the room. Or if you click it again, it will focus on whoever is controlling the audio at the time. Right now, that's me. If anybody is in here and you want to click the tile view where you can see everyone, if you go to that view where you can see everybody, you'll notice that I have a little blue border around my screen, and that's because I'm controlling the audio. If someone else starts talking, then that blue border will be shifted over to them. So maybe we can have Mike say a little something. Mike, you want to talk a little bit and take control over the blue border?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I just got back. What are we talking about?
That's it. That's all I needed.
Okay, good.
So Mike took the control, and then if you're in the single view, then if someone speaks, then they will automatically, if they have control of the window, they'll automatically take the big view of the whole screen. If you want to focus on one person in particular, if you've got the big grid laid out, if I want to see Mike, even though somebody else might be talking, I can click on Mike's screen and his screen will fill the room. So if you want to do that right now, you can click on Mike and you can see Mike even though I'm talking. So that's the that tile view. And then if you want to also, one handy dandy feature, if you want to have the view where someone is filling up the whole screen, if you press the F button, all of those windows on the side, I think they're over here on this side, right? All of the screens of everybody, there's a shortcut. When you press F, it goes to full screen and those videos go away. And that's really helpful so that when a person is performing, they have the full screen and they're not being interrupted by the other competitors in the room who might be making faces or doing something distracting. So we ask that when judges are watching performers, they watch only that one performer filling their screen and hit the F button so that all the other distractions are kind of put off to the side. The only possible exception to that might be events like Duo, where there might be 2 different screens. And at that point, you might need to watch them in tile view. A round like Congress or a debate round might need to be done in the tile view where you can see everyone. But generally speaking, we ask that you click in on the students and give them your undivided attention. Next to that is on the lower corner there, you can see the letter I with a circle around it. This information tab, one of the really key features there is a dial-in number. So the 8x8 software has the ability for students to call in over the phone if they're having problems. And here's how that works. We ask that if students are repeatedly having trouble, if you have competitors in your room who have, they keep losing connection over and over and over again, ask for them to call in using a phone and dialing that number that's in that little letter I with a circle around it. It says dial in, and they can call that phone number. You can see that there's a bunch of numbers that you can call. One is even a 1-800 number that you can call. And then there will be a PIN. That PIN number will be different for whatever room you're in, but you'll need to give them that PIN. And when they type that PIN in, then they can come into the room and their voice will be in this room with us. It won't be a picture, which is obviously a real detraction, but at least they would have the audio in the room and they could participate that way. That's kind of, if all else fails, a way for them to give a speech, at least auditorily. And audibly, I should say, auditorily. I don't think that's a word. Anyway, audibly, I think that's the better word. And then to the right, there's these 3 little dots. When you click that, there are a few other little odds and ends in there, ways to change a few things. There's settings. If you click the settings tab underneath that, that will change your microphone. Sometimes when people have external microphones like this one, I use a little microphone here that sits on my desk. And if you have a microphone that plugs in like that, sometimes if students are using that, the system doesn't know to use that microphone, and that might be an area where you need to go and have them change their microphone setting. We can help them with that. So if you just call the help desk, then maybe the help desk can kind of run through some of those problems. You can also, if you click those 3 little dots down there, you'll also notice that you can mute everyone. What that does when you click mute everyone is that everyone else gets muted except for you. But you can also do the opposite. So the opposite is you can mute everyone else except for someone. So for example, if Mike, do you want to unmute your audio for a second? And so if Mike is talking and someone else is making noise that I don't know who it is, if I'm in the tile view, or I guess even in the big view with all the ones off to the side, there's 3 little dots on the tile view on the upper right-hand corner of Mike's screen. And I can either mute Mike or I can mute everyone else except for Mike. And so when I click mute everyone else, what that's going to do, it mutes everyone else, including me. So I just got muted except for Mike. So if anyone else was talking, they would all be muted, and that way we could hear Mike. That's the way you want it, right?
Exactly.
So that's just kind of a brief rundown of how 8x8 works. It's a very stripped down, very simple and easy to understand video conferencing software. Are there any questions about 8x8 that I can answer?
Yeah, this is Paul. If we're on a ballot with more than one judge, last tournament we were told not to have an after meeting before we submit our ballot. So we're not to get with the other judges and tell them who we're going to pick. We do it on our own, right?
Absolutely. You should not be sharing information with other judges. It should be done completely independent.
Okay.
In fact, you really don't even need to talk to the other judges unless to say, are you done writing your notes so we can move on to the next speaker or something like that. But you should definitely not be conferring on what the decision is.
Even if you have a question on the ballot, you should always go to the help room rather than talking to the other judges, because students could perceive you talking to the other judges as conferring. So definitely don't talk to the other judges. I hate to be, the angry one on that, but if you need any help, go to the help room.
Got you. Thank you.
Also, you brought up something that just reminded me, Paul, is that when you get into a final round, so for the preliminary rounds, there'll just be 1 judge per round. When you get into a final round, there will be 3 judges. So please be sure to wait for all 3 judges before beginning. What we don't want is we don't want people starting a round thinking that they're the only judge for finals. And then they say, all right, go ahead and begin. And then the students do what they're told and they start their humorous interp, and then the other judges show up, 5 minutes later and they miss the beginning or something like that. So be sure to look on the ballot. It will say, please wait for all 3 judges before beginning. It will say that real big at the top of your ballot. And that's only for the final rounds that you'll have multiple judges. Dolly, do you have a question?
So quick question, not necessarily for 8x8, but you mentioned Mike. So in one of the competitions, I saw a few people use AirPods while performing their speech. So are students allowed to use things like that might have a mic inbuilt into it?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the weird things about all of this, I mean, we're all kind of growing and learning, and we had a coach at the last judge training session we did for our California State tournament, who made a really good point, which is that a lot of judges have written on previous e-ballots when doing online tournaments, you're not supposed to do this or you're not supposed to do that. Well, a lot of the norms are changing. Those earbuds, like these little earbuds, have a microphone in them. So when I put it in my ear, I'm not listening to music. I'm sticking in my ear so that you can hear me a lot better, and it's not this really bad microphone that's built into the computer. So that's why they're doing it, and they're not just trying to listen to the latest jams or whatever. They're not, listen to Spotify. I think they're actually trying to make it easier for you. And I think we, as a speech and debate community, need to be accepting of those new norms and try to understand, okay, this is a little bit different than what we would do in person. In an in-person tournament, if a student got up and gave their speech with their earbuds in, you would probably write that down on the ballot saying, you probably don't need that. You should take those out. But here, it may be something pretty important to their speech to be able to be heard.
Especially if they have to move back from the camera.
Right.
A lot of times that's something that will help them still be heard. So there's conditions for that. And remember, the rules of the tournament include that they can actually, look at things on their screen. They can, debate rounds can use the internet. Those are things that we want to make sure that you review the rules. The rules are available to you. We use the SCGFL bylaws, and in those, we've done some things that are a little progressive and a little different than some tournaments. So as a judge, it'd be great if you could review those, especially for the event. But we're going to kind of go over those as we cover each of the events.
Exactly.
Perfect. Thanks. Actually, I'm very happy you're allowing this, because my own kid was a disadvantage of not using a mic, and her voice was not as well received by the judges in her round. So we were thinking of doing it ourselves. So I'm glad to hear that this is being allowed.
Yeah, and I think personally, I think that's really just the whole. We have to be more accepting to new ways and new ideas, right? If we say you can't do this, then you have frustrations from people not being able to utilize the technology that is at our fingertips, and it's also I think a disservice to teach students the new way to interact. There will be more online classes and online work environments. So students need to learn this skill set. And it is a different skill set than in-person communication. Learning how to do an online presentation is different from how to do an in-person presentation. So we do allow students to also utilize virtual slideshows and things like that if they want to do that. So if they want to link to a website during their speech, they can do that. They can also share their own individual screens. So let me show you. Before I was using this screen, so you saw that earlier. One of the things I can do is I can actually turn on my video, because when I pull up the slideshow, it dominates the screen, but it also mutes my camera. If I unmute my camera, so I'm back in the 8x8 room right now, and I've unmuted my camera, you'll notice that I'm down here in the lower corner, so that you can still see me even though I'm showing you this slideshow. So there is a way to do that as well. And we recommend that that's the way that students do it, is that they're seen and they're sharing their slides at the same time. So
which would be a really cool, thing for the future as we continue to do this, and it'll probably go through the fall from what I hear. The other thing to consider is that if your student can't afford a microphone or some kind of headset or whatever it might be, please be innovative. Raise the computer up maybe on a box so that it's more at speaking level, and they can still get a pretty good, listen to, as far as the mic goes, from a distance and still have movement. But with the camera or the computer at a higher level, sometimes that helps here. So, experiment, try it out. Before you get into the tournament, make sure that there is a good room with lots of room and that you're able to hear. That's what we encourage you.
One thing that I also want to mention to everyone is that our tournament uses a set of bylaws, which we're going to go over in a minute, but we also have a best practices guide that we reference. And that best practices guide is for online tournaments only. Here's how we should be operating. Here's how judges should handle students who drop out repeatedly. And we've tried to condense it down so it's not this large, phone book worth of information. And instead, it's almost like a pamphlet. And each page is dedicated, like, this is what judges should expect. And on the next page, here's what students should expect. And here's what coaches should expect. And so we've really tried as much as we can to put everything in one place, basically on one page for each category and of participant, and let them know what to expect out of the tournament. And I would really advise that you take a look at that. If you need a link to it, I'll put that in the chat down here, but you can get it on the tournament registration page, or you can ask the coach of your school to send it to you. But just for your convenience, for those of you that are here, I'll put that in the chat window right now. And when you go to that link, on the right-hand side, it'll say best practices version 3.0, and that's the version that we're using for this tournament.
Also, we encourage you to comment on those best practices after the tournament to give us your feedback and tell us what you think is working and what you think is not. We are not the end-all experts, but we've done a lot of tournaments online, so we've come up with some pretty good things, but it doesn't mean it's perfect, and it doesn't mean it couldn't use input. So please always feel free to give us your feedback and your input, preferably after the tournament, so that we can continue to improve, because we do have more online tournaments coming up for sure.
Yeah, as is evident by it being version 3.0. So we've done 3 major revisions on this thing and a bunch of little micro revisions. And we get that from experiences from our judges and competitors. Sorry, I live near a fire station. That's annoying, isn't it? All right.
No, not at all, Robert. I'm going to mute him. No.
I need to be. Okay, so the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to move along to, unless there's any more questions about the ballots or the 8x8 room. Anything that I've covered up to this point? Any other questions? Okay, so the next thing I want to discuss is I want to go over the rules for each event that's going to be offered for this weekend. So the first thing I want to do is I want to show you where to get those rules and where you're going to want to go is to this website. It's scjfl.org. So even though this is the National Online Junior Forensics Championship, it's being hosted by the SCJFL, which is the Southern California Junior Forensics League. When you go to this website, you'll see here it says Rules and Bylaws. When you click that link, it will take you to our rules and bylaws. This is the long phone book full of all the different rules. And I don't think that you want to read all of this stuff. You can see it's 56 pages of stuff, and we're not asking for you to read that. What we are asking is that you may want to look at some individual event rules. And so on page 9 is where it starts. And what I like to do, I typically click the download searchable PDF. When you click that, it will open up a PDF version of the same document. We could scroll down to page 9. And right here is where we start with the rules for each event. So we begin with limited preparation events. So these would be events like impromptu, extemporaneous. We also consider SPAR and all of the debate events to be limited preparation. So I'm going to go through each one of these events, and I'll pause in between the different category types. We have 3 different category types, and I'll explain what each one is. So limited preparation events are events where the student has a basic idea of what to expect for the tournament, but they have not prepared their speech entirely. They have to wait for a key piece of information that will happen at the tournament. So for impromptu speaking, what happens is the students have 7 minutes, and they will base their speech off of a prompt that you provide to them. Now that you provide to them, but really we provide it to you to give to them. So you don't need to come up with anything. You don't need to think of any quotations off the top of your head or abstract nouns or anything like that. We provide those to you on the e-ballot, and you give that to the student in the chat window, and the students have 7 minutes to both prepare and deliver a speech. There is no set time, meaning students don't have only 2 minutes to prepare and 5 minutes to speak. Typically, most students do take about that amount of time. They typically prep for 2 and speak for 5, but they could prep for 6 minutes and speak for 1 minute if they'd like. They could prep for 20 seconds and speak for 6 minutes and 40 seconds. There's no prescribed way that they have to break that up. Here you can see a little bit more of the actual rules regarding impromptu speaking. And these rules will be on the actual e-ballot itself. So if you're judging impromptu, on that ballot at the top, it will say event rules. And when you click it, this information will be there and it will drop down. Extemporaneous speaking is similar to impromptu. The only difference is that for extemporaneous speaking, they have 30 minutes to prepare and a 7-minute speech. That preparation is going to happen in a different room. They're not going to prepare in front of you. What's going to happen is they're going to prepare on their own, and the questions that they're asked, these are usually political questions about what's going on in politics or the news, and they will have 30 minutes to take that question, research it, develop a speech, and then they'll show up in your round and they will deliver that 7-minute speech. All of that is done behind the scenes, so you don't need to worry about, again, providing a prompt to them. They'll already have that, and they'll show up to your room having already prepped for that 30 minutes. Congress is a kind of role-playing game where students pretend to be Congress members. That could either be in the Senate or the House, and they pass legislation. There's a lot of rules for Congress. It's probably the event with the most rules, and a lot of these are very specific, but you as a judge don't need to know all of these rules. If you are judging Congress, you'll have in the room a parliamentarian, and the parliamentarian is someone who knows all of the rules of Congress, and they're not a judge, but they will be sitting in the room with you and making sure that the students follow all of these rules and that they're doing things correctly. You don't need to worry about that. All you need to worry about as a judge is you just sit back and watch the speeches and decide who takes first place, who takes second place, and so on. I do want to note that for Congress, you'll rank to 9th place always. So in the preliminary rounds, you'll rank all the way to 9th place, and even in the elimination rounds, in the final round, if there's a semifinal round, you'll rank all the way to 9th place, and that's it. So even if there's more than 9 people, you'll just go to 9th place. So that's all for Congress. Lincoln-Douglas debate is a debate usually over a value judgment. So this is something that you'll notice that the rules are surprisingly small here, and this is done so that students can, it's open to interpretation. But the topics are usually something of a value, a question of ethics, I would say. And you'll see the times are here of 6 minutes, 3 minutes, 7 minutes, all of that information right here of the speaking order. That should also be on your ballot as well. So all of these rules and times should be on the ballot when you get there. If it's not for whatever reason, again, you can just go to SCJFL, click on the rules and bylaws, and you'll see this on page 13. You'll see the times there. Policy debate we're not offering at this tournament, so we don't need to worry about that. We can skip over it. Big questions debate is a similar debate format to Lincoln-Douglas. The times are different. One of the things that's interesting with big questions is that this could be a one-on-one debate. It could be 2 people versus 2 people, or even a 1-person versus 2-person debate. And these are often also questions of value judgment, and they tend to be a little bit more philosophical in question. And here are the debate times for those. For Spar rounds, so for Spar, here are the times that we're offering. For Spar, students will have 2 minutes to prep, and Pro will speak for 2 minutes, Con for 2 minutes, and so on. What will happen for Spar rounds is, again, all of the prompts will be loaded into your ballots. You'll take the first speaker and second speaker, and you'll say, okay, Bob and Samantha, I'd like to have you guys debate each other, and you'll click the prompts for Bob and Samantha. It'll be the same prompts if they're speakers 1 and 2, and you paste that into the chat room. If Bob is pro, and you can flip a coin before you decide to give those prompts and say, here's who's going to be pro and here's who's going to be con. Let's say that Bob is pro and Samantha is con. Then Bob will strike one of those 3 topics first. So he'll say, I don't like topic number 2. And then Samantha will say, oh, I don't like topic number 3. So they're left with topic number 1, and that's the topic that they'll debate. So there'll be 3 topics, and each person gets to strike one of them, and whichever one is left is the one that they'll actually debate. Once they've selected the topic, they have 2 minutes to prepare their thoughts. Pro will speak for 2 minutes, Con for 2 minutes. Then they have a crossfire to ask each other questions. During that crossfire, anyone else that's competing in that room can ask questions. So judges cannot ask questions. Other parents or spectators cannot ask questions. Only competitors can ask questions. And then we go back to Pro for rebuttal, and then back to Con for rebuttal. We're not offering dialectics, so we're going to skip over that. Public forum debate is similar to a lot of the other debates that we've already discussed. Here's all the rules that we use for that. And then here are the speaking times for that. The idea behind public forum is that it's you'll see it's advocacy of a position derived from issues presented in the resolution, not a prescribed set of burdens. So there are all the times for public forum. We're not offering RFD either. So those are all of the limited prep events. Can I, let me come back in here for a second. Are there any questions about anything so far? Any limited prep questions? Okay, great. We'll continue on and we'll move along to.
1 second. The last tournament, I think a lot of the rounds went longer because I was like, especially like well, we're not going to have policy this time, but they took a lot of time. Like in Congress, they took a lot of time doing the vote and everything, and so I was confused about how much time do we allow them. We had the strict number of minutes, but do we give them a fair amount of time, like without?
So for debate events, if there's prep time for the event, then you should either be doing speeches or prep time, and that's basically it. I mean, you might give them a few seconds to kind of get situated, but they should not be getting extra time between speeches other than either they're giving their speech or they're in their prep time. Right. For individual speeches, like let's say it's a DI round again, then again, once someone finishes, you may need to take a few minutes to write the last few notes, and the students will patiently wait, and maybe that's a minute or two, and then you should move along to the next competitor and keep the round running. With Congress, the parliamentarian is again the one telling the students, hey, we need to wrap this round up. So you're not responsible for really interjecting in the Congress round. Let the parliamentarian do that. And I'll be in touch with the parliamentarians. I'll be talking with them, and they'll be telling me, hey, we're taking too long, and I'll say, well, we got to speed them up or something like that. Right.
And there's no, when they use their prep time, there's no like saving a minute for later. They use the prep time.
No, incorrect. Well, for Spar, they have to use all the prep time at the beginning. Right. For Lincoln Douglas or Public Forum and Big Questions, you can use that prep time throughout the debate. So they might use 30 seconds here and 15 seconds later, or they could use all of it in one big chunk. So for Spar, they have to use it at the beginning. For all other events, they could space that out.
Got you. Okay, cool.
Any other questions? Great. Let's continue. We'll talk about the platform events. So I apologize if I'm not going too much into depth with a lot of the debate stuff, because first of all, I think most people who are judging debate are at least somewhat familiar with debate already. And in addition to that, I think I feel like less is more in a lot of ways, because as soon as I go on record as saying, here's what you need to look for in debate, then people come back and say, no, you need to look at this instead. And rather than getting into arguments over what should or should not be discussed in debate, I think we'll kind of leave it to people who are judging the debate to decide for themselves. With platform events, these are events that students wrote themselves. All three of these events are going to be offered this weekend. You'll see it says informative speaking here. Informative speech is just that, an informative speech that the student writes. One thing I do want to note is that the time for this weekend, this is the only difference from the rules that we're using. The time this weekend is a 10-minute speech. It is not 5 minutes. That's 10 minutes for middle school. Elementary school is still 5. So that will be reflected on the ballot. When you pull the rules down, that will be reflected on that ballot, that it will say middle school speaking time is 10 minutes. For OO/persuasive speaking, this is very similar to an informative speech. The difference here is that it's persuasive. So you're trying to persuade the audience. Again, here is the time limits. You see it says 10 minutes for middle school, 5 minutes for elementary school. So if you're judging elementary school, the times are often different for those events than they are for middle school. That's not the case for impromptu. We spoke about impromptu earlier. Impromptu is 7 minutes for everyone. So middle school and elementary. Speech to entertain. This is a 5-minute event for both middle school and elementary school. This is either an informative or persuasive speech that uses humor to affect their point. So they're trying to make a point, but using humor to do so. And again, these are all original speeches. This should not be a stand-up comedy routine. That's not what we're looking for here. It's more a traditional speech, but using humor. Are there any questions about platform speeches? Okay, let's move on to interpretation events. So interpretation events are events where the student is performing literature that is not original. We don't have any original interpretation events at this tournament. So all of the events that we are offering are events where the student has researched and found literature that someone else wrote, and then they're performing that. The first event here is Prose. Prose is a 7-minute performance where they are performing typically a short story. It does not have to be. It could be an essay or a novel or novella. What's important is that they cannot perform poetry, and they can't perform a piece of drama literature. Drama would be something like a play or a television show, something that was meant to be performed. So they cannot perform a monologue for Prose. They cannot perform a YouTube video. They can't perform. They cannot perform Harry Potter the movie. However, they could perform Harry Potter from the novel, so they could do that. So it's an important distinction between the different type of literature that they find, and that's a 7-minute speech. You'll also notice here use of manuscript is required. So the students will have have the literature in their hands. Typically, this is in a binder. There's a lot of black binders that students use. It does not have to be black. It does not even have to be in a binder. They could simply hold a piece of paper. But it does say that a use of manuscript is required. So they do have to have the manuscript in front of them. Poetry is very similar to prose. The time is the same. The use of manuscript is the same. Of course, here, the literature should be poetry. So the focus here is bringing the language to life. And you'll also notice that for elementary, the time limit here is 5 minutes for elementary poetry. So it's 7 minutes for middle school and 5 minutes for elementary. In duo interpretation, this is where two students work together to bring a piece of literature to life. And this could be humorous, it could be sad, it could be whatever. They could be shocking, whatever they prefer. And again, all of these are not acting events. So you're not to have costumes or any sort of props. In the case of duo, the students are not meant to look at each other, not meant to make eye contact. They can look, like I could look at my partner's hand, but I couldn't look him in the eye. So they're not meant to make eye contact. You'll also notice that the times are slightly different. For elementary, the time limit is 6 minutes, and for middle school, the time limit is 10 minutes. For POI, or Program Oral Interpretation, this is where students take a bunch of different literature, and that could be either prose, which we discussed earlier, poetry, which we discussed earlier, or a piece of drama, which would be like I said before, a play or a movie or something like that. And they're taking a bunch of different literature from at least two of those three different types, and they're putting them together to create kind of a collage based on a similar theme. So if the students decide to do a performance based around bicycles, then they might find a poetry about bicycles. They might find a short story about bicycles, and then another short story about bicycles, and then a snippet from a movie about bicycles, and then another poem, and then the first poem. So they would jump around between different pieces of literature, creating an overall feel and also kind of focusing on that same theme. You'll see that, again, for this event, a manuscript is required. So the three events that require that manuscript would be a prose, poetry, and POI. All three of them require the manuscript. And the maximum time limit here is 10 minutes. This event is not offered at the elementary level, so there's only one time limit, and that would be 10 minutes for the middle school division. Humorous interpretation is where students take any type of literature they would like. So this could be prose, poetry, or drama, and they're performing it in a humorous way. And the whole point is to make your audience laugh. And that's basically it. They've got 10 minutes to do that. Dramatic interpretation is almost the same thing. The only difference here is that you're trying to make your audience cry. So it's usually serious in tone and very dramatic. So those are very similar events. After that, we have declamation. This is where students are performing a speech that was performed previously. This could have been, this could be something like I Have a Dream or the Gettysburg Address. they would perform those, not necessarily those, but they would perform a speech like that, and then they would put their own spin on it. So they would interpret the speech in their own way. And of course, again, the time limit here is 10 minutes maximum, 5 minutes for elementary school. You'll see that at the bottom down here on page 21. Storytelling is a performance of a story, usually a children's story. It doesn't have to be a children's story. It typically is. It could be a folk tale, anything like that. They are allowed one chair, so they can use that chair how they'd like. And again, the time limit is restricted to 5 minutes. That's 5 minutes for both middle school and elementary. Again, all of these events will be on the individual ballot. So when you ballot, if you have any questions about times or anything like that, you'll see rules, and we'll say all of the rules and the times up there. But for storytelling, we typically say that the intended audience is a group of younger kindergartners or something along those lines. So you're telling a story usually to what would be an intended younger audience. We're not offering original duo or sight reading or original interpretation, so we don't need to go over those events. So that brings us to the conclusion of going over the events. Are there any questions of anything that I mentioned so far about the events we just discussed? Okay, Mike, am I forgetting anything? I'm sure I am, but I thought this might be a good opportunity for you to chime in and mention some things I might have missed.
Yeah, I think the key thing to remember is to give feedback. And like, Robert mentioned, I always like to see feedback, that there's good feedback along with constructive feedback. But also, just one of the notes that I do that helps is called, I do the line. And the lines sometimes help me, is that I'll just take a piece of scratch paper and I'll draw a line straight across. And as each speaker goes, I'll put their name on a dash on that line. And if they're really good, I may put them over to the right. If they need a lot of work, I put them over to the left. And by the end of the round, I can see where everybody lands. And it's a real quick way for me to rank each of those speakers so that I don't forget. Because a lot of times we're distracted, or we think, oh, it was the kid with the bow tie. Oh, wait a minute, there was 2 kids with the bow tie. So we never want to do that to a kid. We want to make sure they're getting the accurate rankings. That's really important to these kids too, especially we've had kids that have gotten ballots back with comments for another kid's speech. And so it was obvious that the judge got confused, and that happens. So try to really take good notes. Taking notes away from the computer sometimes helps, because you may not be able to put the ballot on screen with the video. If you have 2 monitors, that's always a really helpful thing to have the video on one monitor and the ballot on another. That way you can actually interact with both very quickly. But really, please take judging seriously, because it means so much to these kids. And this is a national tournament. So for them, it's the end of the year. It's a chance for them to get that final feedback as they grow through the summer and get ready for the next year. And so your comments and your constructive help really is a positive thing for these. And think of, if you're a parent, think of your own kids. What kind of opportunity this is for them to have feedback from other people, because honestly, that's what this is all about, public speaking, and the ability to get in front of people that you don't know and be able to see how you do. And so share that, and please give them that. That being said, we do have a tournament to run, and that means we've got to keep things going as fast as we can. So the quicker you can put these comments in, and make sure that you're staying available to the tournament so that we can text you or say, hey, we really need that ballot. That really helps us make sure that the rounds stay on time. Because remember, one ballot can hold up the entire tournament. So it's really important that we get all these ballots in and get them done correctly. Just remember the phrase, until you see the palm trees, you're not done. That's a great way to always remember it.
Thanks, Mike. 2 things that I also want to mention. Paul Brewer, I saw you had a question, but I'll get to you in just 1 minute. I want to mention something that Dolly had suggested, which is that that judges might want to wear headphones. That really helps you hear what the students are saying, and that's a great idea. So as judges are watching, hearing what they're saying is a lot easier if you've got headphones on your end. You may not have headphones that you can hook up to a computer or to your tablet device or whatever it is that you're using. But if you do have them and you can, that's a great way to make sure that you're hearing even just like the smaller noises and lines aren't being lost in this format. Additionally, I want to talk about, for a minute, something that's a little new that we're doing at this tournament that we haven't done for previous tournaments. So if you've been with us at previous tournaments, we're doing something slightly different this time, which I think is going to solve some of the problems that we've had before. And that's on pushing ballots. So here's how this is going to work. What we've always done is 10 minutes before the round begins. So let's say the first round starts at 8 o'clock. 10 minutes before the round begins, we release the ballots and we say, all right, judges, here's your ballot. And we send them out to everybody through email and text and everything. And if they accept those ballots, great, they're on their way. 2 minutes after the round has begun, so at 8:02, we've got a list of judges who haven't accepted their ballots. If they haven't accepted their ballots, we then need to push it to a different judge, right? They're not picking up, so we need to move along. So what we do at that point, what we've traditionally done is we've just said, okay, we'll just put it over to a replacement judge. So we'll push it to a new judge. But the problem has become sometimes when we push to these new judges, those new judges don't pick up those ballots either. And now we're waiting another 12 minutes before we find yet another judge. And sometimes if that judge doesn't pick up, we're 3 judges in and the students have been waiting for a really long time. So we've come up with a solution that's much more similar to in-person tournaments, which is we're asking all of the judges at the tournament who are scheduled for that time to go to a standby room. So this room is going to be NOJFC standby. So if at 7:50, if you receive a ballot, you don't need to go to the standby room. You've got a ballot, you go straight to your competition room and you wait for the students. But if you got a standby notice, which means, hey, hang tight because we might need to use you, then there will be a link that's sent to you through either email or text that says, please go to NOJFC standby and wait in that room. And it'll be an 8x8 room just like this. Then at 8:02, Mike or myself will come into that room and we have a list of all of the replacement judges and we'll say, all right, is Fred here? Can Fred take this ballot? If Fred is not here, Fred doesn't say, I'm here, I'll take that ballot, then Fred will be marked as a no-show for that round. And then we'll move down to the next person on our list and we'll just systematically go through and make sure that we've got everybody present. That way the students aren't waiting 20 or even 30 minutes for a judge to show up. We know we've got the judges here in the standby room. We've also adjusted the payment fee based off of what we originally said. If you miss one round, that's a $50 fee. We've adjusted that fee so that the first round, if you miss a round, it's a $20 fee. If you miss a second round, it's a $40 fee, and it's a $50 fee for every round after that. So we want to try to make sure we're not after the money. What we're trying to do is hold everyone accountable for this tournament, making sure that they are showing up for rounds that they've indicated that they will be there for. And the students are relying on those judges as well. Mike, you had something you wanted to say?
Yeah, one thing I want to add also is the idea of cameras for the judges. We'd like for the judges and the competitors to keep their cameras on. There's no safety issue to that. They still can see things, so that's being taken care of by other things. The ability for the competitor to see the reactions on the faces, especially of the judges, is an important part of trying to make this as close to an in-person tournament as we can. When everybody turns off their visuals, kind of like what's going on in the room right now, we don't know if you're listening or if you're like it. And I know that you may not be in the right clothing or whatever it is, but if you could do us a favor and be in the right clothing and be in an environment where you feel comfortable turning on your camera, that would really help those competitors get the reactions that some of them really need, especially like humorous interp or dramatic interp. They need those facial reactions to be able to really sense if they're reaching, if they're doing what they need to do. And that's an important part of communication. It's just not the voice. It's so much more. So please help us out by using your camera and encouraging students to keep their cameras on. Now, muting is a different thing. There's a lot of other activity in the household. There might be other things going on. And if they're set up in an area where parents are walking by constantly, which we see a lot of, please tell them that this is a tournament. And just like they have to go to a room and sit patiently and quietly, we would appreciate the same kind of attention to this tournament, that they find a place that they can be more secluded, that there's no other family noises going on, etc. So please take that consideration for yourself as well. And we'll tell you just like our students. Make sure that all your other Wi-Fi devices are off or not working or not being utilized. It will affect your ability to use. And those devices include Netflix on your smart TV. That accesses your Wi-Fi. Alexa, which is always on and always listening, affects your Wi-Fi. So if you can look through all those things and make sure that you check out our best practices, we can make sure that everybody, especially the judges, have a really strong connection and don't miss a thing in any of the rounds.
I really want to echo what Mike was saying. We've done a lot of tests in preparation for this tournament and some of the other tournaments that we've run, and we've done a lot of research, and we found that overwhelmingly, no question, we've done tests at the elementary, the middle school, and even the college level of these tournaments. Students who perform to a room full of muted screens don't get the same reaction, and they don't have nearly as much satisfaction about the tournament versus when you're actually seeing facial expressions and people are kind of nodding and giving that visual feedback. Obviously, there might be some exceptions to that. Some people have problems with their internet connection, so that when their video is up, if it's eating into much bandwidth, they may need to mute. Otherwise, they'll freeze up and drop out. Okay, that might be an exception. But overwhelmingly, please try to unmute those videos and ask the students to do the same thing, so that the speaker can get that visual feedback as well. And same for audio, as Mike was saying too. Like, there could be a dog barking or a baby crying, or maybe you live next to a very noisy fire station. And whatever the audio problem might be. So Paul, I'm sorry, I put you off just a little bit. So what was the question that you had?
Okay, you answered the one about standby. Thank you for that.
Sure.
I think that's a perfect idea. As far as giving kids feedback at the end of it, it dawned on me last tournament that, and I would give them feedback, and I say, you all did good. You guys are really strong speakers and stuff like that. But it dawned on me, it's like when they ask you, and we tell them there'll be feedback on the ballots at the end. So when they ask us for feedback on screen with our screen on, I sense that they're trying to fill us out to see which way we're going. So is that is that
term for that? The debate term for that is disclosing, which is
right.
Telling them how you voted.
Right.
In debate, especially, there's kind of a cultural expectation that the judge will give some sort of feedback as to what they did well or what needs some improvement. And we don't mind the feedback, but we do mind the disclosure. So our rules and bylaws say that judges should not disclose in the prelim rounds.
Right.
In the quarterfinal or the semifinal or something like that, it's important that you disclose after all of the judges have made up their mind. Please don't say, well, I vote for this side, before other judges have already decided. You want to make sure, check with all the judges that's the one time that you do want to talk to the judges of like, okay, do you have a decision? Are you good? Are you good? Okay, once everyone has decided, then you would tell them, and that's so that there's no mistakes that happen, because it's a sudden death at that point. And if you accidentally filled the ballot out incorrectly, then we could be, saying, oh, this team advances, when in reality it was the other team that advances. And that way we could fix that problem and say, no, that's not what they told us in the room. And then we could solve it that way. But in the prelim rounds, do not disclose.
Okay. And Robert's talking about debate only.
Right.
Debate, right.
We don't give any feedback in the IE rounds, okay?
Okay.
Say, I'll put it all on the ballot, that's fine. A little bit of feedback about, how they did speaker-wise, and, that maybe you liked certain arguments is fine. Keep it to about 2, 3, 5 minutes max. But if you're going to be in a round where you're going to disclose, and there's other judges, it's always encouraged that you get that decision into the ballot first and then disclose, so that there's nothing potentially going to influence you as you're talking to them, because that would be unfair as well. So make sure the decision is made and it's firm, and then you're going to disclose.
Right. Thank you.
No problem. And I think it's always safe, Paul. It's always a safe thing, no matter what event you're watching, just to say, you know what, I'll put it on the ballot. I'm not going to give any feedback. You're always fine with that. And students might be a little frustrated, like, oh, he didn't give us any feedback, but you're okay to say that. No one's ever going to, the students might be a little annoyed, but no tournament official is ever going to come at you and say, why didn't you give feedback?
Yeah.
Right. When you've already done it on the ballot, which they'll have access to. Right. Gotcha.
Are there any other questions about anything? So we're going to move towards wrapping up this session. I just want to make sure if there's any questions about anything that we've discussed today or anything that we haven't discussed, in case you have any other questions about what to expect for this weekend. As I mentioned before, this video will be available on YouTube, so you can go back and rewatch it if you didn't get enough, or if there's other things that weren't quite clear that you want to go back and review, you can check it that way. Or if you want to pass it along to other judges who weren't able to be here. One more time, I just want to make absolutely sure, are there any other questions from anyone about anything regarding this weekend, or just life in general?
If you want to complain or lament, whatever.
Well, we think you're going to have a lot of fun. We think it's going to be a great tournament. We're excited to host it for everyone. And thank you all very much for your time. And that's it for today.
Thank you, Robert, for all the hard work you've put into this.
Thanks, Mike. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.